أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآل محمد. In a verse in the Holy Quran in Surah Ibrahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks to Musa and He tells him, وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. He tells the Prophet alayhi salam to remind them, meaning to remind his community of the days of God. And when you take a look at different commentators within the Holy Quran that speak to what exactly is God speaking to when he tells Moses to remind his community about God's days, there's a difference of opinion. Some would state that these are the days in the holy month of Ramadan or within their particular religious tradition, whatever those most sacred days are. Others would state that Ayyam Allah are representative of the first 10 days in the month of Dhul Hijjah. Others state that the days of God are Fridays, for instance, because Fridays are the day in which we gather to perform communal prayer and ritual. But some have taken a different approach to what it means when God states, وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ, and remind them about the days of God. And they state that every single day is the day of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because not only is he the owner of the days, but every day is an opportunity for us to see closeness to him as the Wajah. And the notion behind this particular perspective is that when we talk about the utilization of our days and of our time as we are present within this transient dunya, there has to be a recognition, again, of the fact that it is something transient and something passive. Thus, why not make the most of the opportunity that we have at this given moment? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Moses, and it's quoted within the Holy Quran, such that every single one of us also read and reflect and contemplate upon that verse, وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ, know that every day is a new day, whereby when we wake up in the morning, we're present within God's divine kingdom. And no matter where I turn, I have to turn back to him, because again, he is the owner and he is the master of this universe. And when you wake up with that opportunity to know that it's a new chance, a new day, a new opportunity for me as an individual to see closeness and proximity and fulfill my responsibilities to my Creator, I feel excited. I feel prideful with that fact that God has given me this opportunity and this blessing. But like we know, it's really hard to maintain that sense of recognition of the blessing of the day that we have in front of us over a consistently long period of time. It's very challenging to remain focused on the fact that we have today as a day of opportunity and blessing, because we're so consumed by, again, distraction of this dunya. And because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam recognize that we are a believer that is distraught by distraction so many a time, and that it's really difficult to live this very idealistic sort of relationship with God, whereby we're always every day getting closer, and not sort of the more realistic sort of approach toward knowing God, which recognizes that we go through ups and downs during the course of our spirituality. I wanted to share with you a really powerful narration, tradition. It's also very practical from Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, in which he advises us with regards to how we can live our days in a way that's meaningful, but in a way that's also practical. He states, alayhi salam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, lil-mu'mini thalathu sa'at. He states that for the believer, there are 3 parts to his or her respective day. And you don't want to see this as 3 parts of the day, meaning that we live for 24 hours in any given day, and that 8 hours is for X, and 8 hours is for Y, and 8 hours is for Z. No, but rather a comprehensive approach, a more holistic approach toward understanding our roles and responsibilities in any given day. He states, للمؤمن الثلاث ساعات فساعة يناجي فيها ربه. The first moment or the first part of one's day is in communication with his or her Lord. And if you think about it, though prayers, remembrance of God by means of ritual, don't consume 1/3 of the day, again, most of us, or all of us, should be allowing for our days to revolve around the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, literally by the performance of the prayer. In the morning, noon, afternoon, evening, night, through the 5 daily prayers that we perform on a day-to-day basis, it's an opportunity for us, even though that over the long term, we recognize that there's growth. In the short term, it's hard for us to see it that way, that prayer is going to be beneficial to us, at least down the road. I'll give you an example. It said one day that there was a group of individuals. They were in the company of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, who is amongst the grandsons of the Messenger of God, one of our greatest scholars amongst Muslims unanimously, but also is the 6th Shi'i Imam. One day, there was a group of his companions and his students sitting in the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Masjid al-Nabawi. And they see someone from a distance who is praying, but just going through the motions, so to say. They could tell, based on his outer appearance of his prayers, that he wasn't someone who was probably so focused in or zeroed in with regards to having khushu' in his salah. Rather, he was standing and bowing and prostrating and doing it very, very fast and just trying to sort of get the job done. To which they begin to talk amongst themselves, and Ja'far as-Sadiq overhears them. And he tells them, what are you guys talking about? To which he says to one of those companions, one of those students, says that we're talking about that man, look at the way that he's praying. To which Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, alayhi salam, he responds to them and he tells them, he says, first of all, don't pass judgment on someone when you don't know what's in his heart. But second, even if his prayer is lacking in its relationship with God, even if it's appearing on this outward physical form, and even if you're speaking the truth with regards to his inner spiritual form, inna salatahu tanha yawma. He says, surely this prayer is going to stop him from committing sin one day. It's going to bring him benefit tomorrow. Which is why we are encouraged, for instance, within Islamic tradition, through the ahadith of the Prophet alayhi salam, and even for our children, that it's really, really important to cultivate prayers and cultivate acts of ritualistic worship for them, even though they may not understand what it is that they're doing. Because when you grow up in that sort of environment, there's more opportunity for you to see and to experience and to feel. And the idea is that we take growth as a long-term approach, not something that happens overnight. Anyhow, we go back to the hadith, in which Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he states, للمؤمن ثلاث ساعات فساعة يناجي فيها ربه, that the first part of one's day, of the believer's day, is to be in communication with your Lord. And truly, if you begin a day in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you conclude the day in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the idea is that everything in between it will also consist of that blessing and that barakah that we're seeking from God during the course of the day. And it's not such that I pray early in the morning and I wake up for Fajr prayers because I want to have a good day. Or I wake up in the morning to pray Fajr prayers, or I perform the night prayer because I'm going to have a tough conversation, or I have to go for a job interview, or because X and Y and Z. No, we do it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do it, and that it's, again, positive and transformational for our internal spiritual dimension, more so than anything else. Anyhow, فَسَاءَةٌ يُنَاجِي فِيهَا رَبَّهُ. Of course, undoubtedly, when Ali ibn Abi Talib breaks down the 3 parts of the day, it has to include the remembrance of God. He continues, وَسَاءَةٌ يَرُمُّ مَآشَهُ. The second responsibility, or the second part of the day of the believer, is that the human being, the believer, has to fulfill his or her obligations and their duties. We have to go to school. We have to go to work. We have to eat. We have to drink. We have to use the restroom. You have to do laundry. You have to clean up. All of these things are chores and responsibilities that every single one of us have to do, whether we like them or not. And again, the religion of Islam is not such that it commands us or it advises us, or it even compels us, or it's even desirable for us to go and, for instance, live in a mountain and fast during the day and worship during the night. No, there's times for that. Not to say that that is bad, but for an extended period of time, no, it's not such that we leave this world and abandon it totally. In a famous hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, he states, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ تَرَكَ آخِرَتَهُ لِدُنْيَا. Obviously, he states that it is not from us. It is not from us, meaning from the Prophet ﷺ, that someone abandons the next world solely for this world. Obviously, we recognize that. We're not going to preoccupy our minds with this dunya when there's a bigger picture at the end of the day. But he continues, and he states, وَلَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ تَرَكَ دُنْيَاهُ لِآخِرَتَهُ. It's not from us as well who abandons this world solely for the next. Meaning we're not compelled, it's not even encouraged to spend every single moment of our lives. No, we have to live. We have to work. We have to earn it. We have to earn a living. We have to take care of our family, which is why we have ahadith from the Prophet and his family, ﷺ, which tell us, for instance, about the one who leaves his or her home seeking out sustenance, meaning to go and find a job and to go and make money, as long as it's bringing benefit, blessing back to the family. And there's, of course, a whole host of prerequisites, that rizq is halal and so on. That if someone goes seeking their livelihood, but dies on the way, they die the death of a martyr, for instance. The idea is, again, to recognize that we have responsibilities and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger in the Holy Quran don't forbid us from seeking out those things during the course of our lives. He continues. So the first part of the day of the believer is in the remembrance of God. The second part is in fulfilling our chores, our duties, our responsibilities. وَسَاءَةٌ يُخَلِّي بَيْنَ نَفْسِهِ وَبَيْنَ لَذَّتِهَا فِيمَا يَحِلُّ وَيَجْبُ. And then he continues, and he states, he states in the third part of the day of the believer, he or she should leave it between him and himself to do that which he enjoys, again, as long as it's something that is permissible. To go in and socializing with your friend and spending time with them, nothing wrong with that. Again, as long as it's in permissible sort of means, it's not only allowed, but it's encouraged. These are good things. If you like to go and play a sport, or you like to go and watch a movie or watch a particular show or whatever it might be, at the end of the day, again, the religion of Islam is not restricting us in any way. The idea is, of course, to prioritize every day, recognizing that every moment is an opportunity for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, a day that begins with the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal, we're more inclined toward concluding with the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal as well. So again, in summary, 3 points that the Imam alayhi salam mentions. That the first part of one's day is in communication or in communion with your Lord. The second part of the day is in fulfilling our responsibilities to ourselves, our responsibilities to our families, our responsibility to society, and thirdly, to do that which one enjoys. I say all of this and I'll conclude with the reflection from chapter 103 of the Holy Quran, which is, of course, Surah Al-Asr. Over here, we see that, again, the religion is meant to be something that's practical, that we endure on a day-to-day basis. And that, again, recognizing that it may be hard to maintain a lifestyle of obedience and worship ritualistically from morning to night over the course of years. No, that's not what is expected from us. But even though we're encouraged, we're encouraged to enjoy that which we are afforded in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 103 of the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wal asr, again swearing by time. Inna al-insan lafi khusr. That surely the majority of people are going to fail like in this test. That's where we have to be careful. Because that first part, many a time, is void, meaning the remembrance of God is void from our days. And that's something that's dangerous. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except for those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and those who do good deeds, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and those who enjoin others in truth, and those who enjoin with others in patience. Collectively, again, we have to take a look at some of those important things that we have to do during the course of our days and during the course of our lives. And it starts again with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then if we find that difficult, if we find that challenging, then once in a while it's important for us to shake ourselves up, to wake ourselves up, so to say, to the reality again of every moment being something passing, and every moment being something transient. And that death and mortality is really close to us. So why would I waste the opportunity that I have today at this given moment? They said that one day the Prophet ﷺ was with a group of his companions as they were attending a funeral of one of their community members. And as they were lowering the body into the grave, he stated, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to those around him, he said, a life that ends like that is not worth wasting. Why would I waste it? Why would I not make the most of my opportunity when that is ultimately, absolutely, definitely going to be the destination that we're all seeking? Not in a way that's fearful, but in a way that's real. And if we're keeping in mind, again, the transient nature of this dunya, then we will find and we will see that every moment and every day should begin with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, conclude with it, but again, there's so much other time that's afforded for us to fulfill our roles and responsibilities. In summary, this tradition of ours, in following in the footsteps of our messenger and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, something that is meant to be practical, something that we can live. It's a living tradition in that way, in the way that he enjoyed, in the way that he lived during the course of his life. We take example from that. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to walk in his sacred footsteps, and to be amongst those who are able to make the most of our days during this time. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala